Serious, what is a surprisingly easy way to accidentally die? I sneezed the other day and had the worst headache of my life all of a sudden. Just got out of the hospital after a week with a subarachnoid brain hemorrhage. Didn't die but easily could have if I took a Tylenol and went to bed. FDR's last words were, "I have a terrible headache." In all fairness, FDR's health was seriously failing in dozens of different ways. You're almost always one bad trip and fall away from a fatal head injury. Happened to my best friend 6 years ago. Completely unexpected. Tripped over some wires and hit his head on his coffee table and bled out. He wasn't found until 3 days later. Still freaks me out. So, it's insane to me how easily the brain can bleed. EMT went on a call where an alcoholic man had fallen in his kitchen. He seemed concussed and he had a good hit since there was blood, but nothing actively bleeding by the time we got there. He still just seemed off, but again, tough to tell if it's concussion or has he just been drinking more than the empty cans we can see imply. Later that day, we saw him at an upgraded trauma center. He'd sustained a subdural bleed as revealed by the cord scan. I definitely recommend any head injury go to the emergency room, just based on this alone. Engulfment. Standing on top of a large pile of anything seems so innocent, until a tiny bit shifts and suddenly you're drowning in grain sand rocks. Falling down the stairs. These people climbed big mountains in nasty conditions and got taken out walking down the stairs. Link. An acquaintance of mine lost his sister that way. She tripped on some shoes and fell down the stairs. Extremely sad. This is a big fear of mine. I have 2 flights of hardwood stairs in my house. If you are wearing socks it's really slippery. I fell once. I just landed on my back and didn't tumble down. It hurt, but I got over it. If I fell head first I don't know what would happen. I live alone, so I wouldn't be found for a while. There's a film on Netflix called Earthquake Bird where a woman slips on polished hardwood stairs. It was so chilling. I have to be careful not to wear slippery socks on our stairs because they are painted uneven Victorian steps. Everyone in our house has fallen on them sooner or later. Some of us more than once, but we take them so slowly that injury is minimized. No hurrying. My cousin got up in the night to use the toilet, tripped in the dark, hit her head, went back to bed, and never woke up. This is exactly the reason why I bought these little motion sensor disc lights that attach to my baseboards. Humans don't see in the dark well enough to navigate without mistakes. I'm sorry for your loss. That's terrible. If you're ever stuck in the dark, use one hand against the wall to guide you, the other ahead of your face to look for obstacles, and walk carefully to help not fall down. I see you've never lived with a cat. Getting really drunk and then choking to death on your vomit. Always stay with someone if they are passed out. I have a friend who ate some Chinese food one day, cashew chicken to be exact, then went for a run about an hour later. He made the unfortunate discovery that there is an obscure allergy where exercising after eating something with celery in it can cause anaphylaxis. He was minutes away from dying. He survived because a few weeks before that, he discovered his next door neighbors were paramedics who had saved him after crashing his bicycle in gravel at around 40 miles. He ran to their house and they saved his life. Again, he might owe them a Christmas present for a few years, lol. For twice his lifetime. Taking the springs off car struts. I had a buddy with a set of manual strut compressors help me change my struts out a while back. I had to help him hold the springs while we were compressing them, and I was so uncomfortable the whole time, knowing one wrong slip or release and we are both ducked. Anything with big springs are very dangerous, including garage door springs. Yeah, I was helping my dad fix the springs on his garage door, and he was like, careful with that, and I was like, I know, but if it breaks it won't be my problem anymore. Simple complacency on the job site. Do not take for granted that the ladder, sawhorse, gantry, whatever that you've used for years, is in the same shape it was yesterday, most especially in a shared workplace. Years ago they'd have paper cuts at construction sites with a picture of a man with a missing leg and a crutch, and the words "a moment of carelessness, a lifetime of regret." Overcalculating my fast-acting insulin dose. Word to this. Bounce myself into the emergency room once because I reversed my long-term and short-term dose at lunch. When I was first diagnosed, my pharmacy explained which insulin was which incorrectly. For months I was using long-acting as fast-acting and fast as long. I didn't know better, so I just thought that's just what life with type 1 diabetes was going to be like. Finally learned I was using my insulin wrong after an episode of low sugar, where I thought I was Batman and basically sleepwalking through the house. Took my family hours of literally throwing orange juice into my mouth for me to wake up and realize what was happening. Extreme low blood sugar is no joke. Thousands die of drowning every year. Ocean currents nothing to duck with. Swim sideways parallel to shore in a rip current, it could save your life. My family, we are all competitive swimmers, swam or played water polo in Division 1 and 2 in college, and the amount of people that terrify us when we go swimming in the ocean is upsetting. Have had to save a few people too. Honestly, most people should not be swimming in the ocean without proper swim technique. We even know when to and when not to. Slipping in the shower. Few weeks ago there was an earthquake in Southern California and I just happened to be stepping in the shower at that moment. I have never felt so helpless, being naked and wet and surrounded by glass. I guess any traffic versus pedestrian related death. A thin yellow line and your assumption that everyone else wants to live while driving. I worked with a kid who was young, but his body was a physical wreck. Always going to physical therapy. He walked like an old man basically. After we worked together a while, I asked him what the deal was with his health. He told me a young girl got into a fight with her boyfriend and decided to commit suicide. She wrote a letter, put it on her passenger seat and gunned it, head on, into the first car she encountered on the road, which unfortunately was him. She was successful, but left him in chronic pain for probably the rest of his life. Holy crap everyone. I don't post very much, and I've never gotten more than a handful of upvotes or replies. This is very cool. Thank you. I guess the fear of someone involving you in their suicide attempt is a pretty universal fear. Just wanted to tell you folks, the guy I was talking about is just an amazing human being. He literally has zero hate or animosity towards this young person who drastically changed his life for the worse. Even though his body is held together with screws, plates and duct tape, his words, he absolutely said he would have forgiven her if she survived, because young people often don't understand the massive repercussions of their actions. He actually felt sad for her and her family. I actually looked him up on Facebook this morning. He's now married to his high school sweetheart, has 2 beautiful young boys and actually coaches their youth soccer team. He uses a wheelchair pretty often now, but it doesn't stop him from living his best life. Dude's a legend. Falling off a small ladder, just enough air time to flip over and land on your head. Adding to that fear, the worst thing you can do is fall on your back, hitting the back of your head. It's far more deadly and far more common than landing on your head when falling off a ladder. You can fall from the second step and it is enough to kill you. Yep, a client that I worked with occasionally was outside doing yard work with her husband. He missed a step coming down from a ladder, fell from only 3 steps up, and landed just like that. Died in the ambulance on his way to the hospital. Exhaustion. It really makes us clumsy and jumpy, and especially with how easy it is to fall asleep at the wheel when you are tired, and how deadly car accidents can get. I would go with that. I've read sleep deprived drivers are just as dangerous as drunk drivers. Mythbusters proved that your reaction times are worse while sleep deprived than while drunk. Driving. Are you familiar with the micromort scale? It calculates death risk, 1 childbirth, 80 molly pills and so on. Taking a cab to the airport is more dangerous than the actual flight. A lot more. Hitting the back of your head is surprisingly dangerous. Knew someone who hopped out of a slow moving car in a parking lot, hit his head, gone. Yep, it's crazy how little it takes to put us down for good. Hard surface our heads bye bye, yet at the same time, thrown down a mountain, barely a scratch, moving on. Electricity. We use a ton of it, and it's surprisingly easy to mess up. Friend of a friend bought an old house to fix up, and unbeknownst to him a live wire was touching the plumbing. He was electrocuted in the shower. Driving. It's the most dangerous thing the average person might do in a day. Having your head crushed or broken in some way by farm animals. My great uncle was killed by getting trampled. My sister was bitten by a moose. I nearly choked to death. I was lying in bed and was sucking a large peppermint to help disguise the taste of the chemotherapy that I was having for a year. Suddenly the peppermint went down my throat and I couldn't breathe. Almost instinctively I lurched over the side of my bed and did a Heimlich maneuver on the side of the bed, which is a water bed, so has a hard side. The peppermint shot out and I could breathe again. No more peppermints in bed for me. Back in 7th grade I went to school with a kid. He got an ear infection at first. Then in a series of quick unfortunate events, it went to his brain and killed him. My ex had that happen to him. Infection went from his ear, to his bones behind his ear, to his brain. Ended up with meningitis, and survived after brain surgery. Happened to him again about 8 years later with a sinus infection. Survived again. Then randomly died from a heart defect that had gone unnoticed at 25. Life's a bitch. Picking up a live cone snail at the beach. Could you elaborate please? I wish to know the danger of snails. Cone snails, the ones with cone-shaped shells, have a poison barb that they can shoot out like a harpoon. The smaller ones don't do much more damage than a bee sting, but larger ones can kill a human with their toxin. They're aquatic snails, so you'd only find them at the beach, and the larger ones only exist in really tropical areas. Edit forgot to mention that there's no antivenom for the sting, and it kills relatively quickly, so if you get hit, you've got about enough time to think about what it'll say on your headstone before you die. There are some smaller ones that have super deadly poison too, in the South Pacific. Slipping on an icy footpath. I spent a week in hospital after slipping, but I only remember the last 2 days of it. Trip. Fall. Hit the back of your head. Lights out. Mixing bleach and ammonia while cleaning the bathroom. Engine lathe tie back hair. Take off all jewelry and really understand the brake and emergency shut off. Do a clear web search for lathe accident and see what can happen faster than you realize. Would not do this unless ready to lose your lunch. It gets gruesome. Not recommended for more than a few minutes. Seriously, please be careful. Listen to your instincts and shop teachers. Texting while driving. There is this ad on billboards near me and it's super metal. It says better left undead than read, and honesty, it's true. Angering a random person. Next time you think about honking at someone who cuts you off in traffic, just assume that they're totally unhinged and will chase you down with a gun. And all it takes is one dirty look for someone to sucker punch you and have you fall backwards and hit your head on the ground. Instant lights out. Drowning requires no effort. Tooth infections. Those infections get bad really quickly and can cause sepsis and death. It's way more common than people think, so please brush your teeth. Eat a grandma. When I was 18, my doctor gave me some sage advice. She said, the most common cause of death for someone your age is stupidity. If it looks too far to jump, it is. If you think you might need to call a cab, you definitely need to call a cab. If he says that he doesn't need to wear a condom, you need to leave immediately. You are an intelligent young woman. If something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts. Don't be stupid, and you'll be fine. You will never be an Olympic long jumper with that attitude, Missy. Hanging a heavy decorative object over your bed. If it falls while you're sleeping, you're dead. This happened to me last night. I've been an archer for years and keep my very heavy bow over my bed. I have a poster over it that peeled off my wall last night and fell on the bow. The bow then fell and landed right beside me, hitting my cheek. I was just lucky that it didn't fall directly on my head. Shooting guns at an unsafe backstop. I've had bullets ricochet back at me once when I was shooting some old rusty metal. I know someone who, for a demonstration on ancient weaponry, shot an arrow at a recreated medieval helmet from a huge distance away. It ricocheted perfectly and got him in the leg. Eating. There's always a chance of choking, and not many people know the Heimlich maneuver if people are even within reach. Edit if you're paranoid now and live by yourself, there's many self-performing Heimlich maneuver you can learn.